You're on 94.5 FM. This is Calum, and at the moment we are speaking to, live in the studio, the Minister for the Northern Australian Development, Minister for Economic Development and Major Projects, of Asian Engagement and Trade, the Minister for Police, Fire and Emergency Services, Minister for Strategic Defence Liaison, the Treasurer, Minister for Business, Minister of Employment and Training, the Minister for Local Government and Regions, the Minister for Defence, Industries and Community Support, the Minister for Alcohol Policy, and the Minister for Corporate and Information Services, the Honourable Chief Minister of the Northern Territory, Adam Giles. How are you today?
Mate, by reading or listening to all that, it must be pretty busy.
It appears so. So thank you for joining us today, Chief Minister, and it's a pleasure to have you in the studios with us here at Larrakia Radio.
Thanks for having us. It's good to be here. It's great to see so many people here working.
Fantastic. Now, we brought you in because there are a load of things that have just been happening very, very recently in the Northern Territory. And the first one I want to talk to you about, Chief Minister, is your government has just announced funding to upgrade police stations across the Northern Territory.
One of the things that, I hope I haven't preempted your question, but one of the things that's interesting being in government, we do a lot of work behind the scenes to make things happen.
Yep.
One of the challenges is communicating that to everybody about actually what we're doing, because a lot of people say, well, what are you doing here and what are you doing there? But we've been quite busy. So yesterday we just announced what we're actually doing in terms of construction activity in the police sector, being the police minister, and we went and had a look at what we're actually doing to date, and we're spending $37 million building new police stations in different parts of the Northern Territory. Now, that's important not only because it gets or delivers improved policing facilities for communities, but it also stimulates the construction industry, creates jobs, get people spending money, and obviously when people have money then they go and buy things at the shops, so it helps the retail turnover. So we just wanted to let people know what we're doing in regards to that. So $37 million worth of works on the go right now for policing, looking at things like Millicarpity with the new police station out there. Not included in that $37 million is what we're doing to try and help some more housing in Millicarpity for those police officers when they get out there. We're putting $9 million to the redevelopment of the Greater X building in Alice Springs for the new police station Alice. We've got $9 million going towards a new police station at Yuendamu. I think it's around $7 million going towards a station at Alpera. A large amount of money, haven't got the number on the top of my head, but money towards Owen Pelly police station for upgrades. So there's a lot of these things going on, and it's just important for us to let people know that while we might talk about big things here or there or respond to silly Labor accusations, there's a lot of work that's going on all the time by government, and it's all about creating economic opportunities and better service delivery for communities.
Okay, so it's not just the major towns throughout the NT, it's also communities as well.
Oh, it's communities as well. I mean, we're doing a lot of police work everywhere in regards to communities. If we just talk about police, it was only probably 6 months ago I was out at Gapawiak opening the new police station at Gapawiak, and there's a range of different things happening all over the territory in regards to policing. And I think we have now 63 police stations in the Northern Territory, which is pretty good compared to where we were 10 years ago. We've got obviously Alice Springs, Tennant Creek, Katherine, Palmerston, Darwin and Gove as our main big well-known urban centres. So you've got 6 or 7 locations there, but in total we have 63 police stations, and the reason we've got 63 is because we've had a very coordinated effort, both ourselves and the prior Howard government when they announced the intervention, because part of that was putting out a lot of police stations and improving law and order services in remote communities. So it's interesting, 63 police stations in the territory. If you have a look at somewhere like Cairns, which has around the same population of the territory, they have 2 police stations.
Yeah.
So when it looks at how difficult it is to deliver government services in the territory, 63 police stations compared to 2 for the same population. It's a challenge. Same thing happens with schools. I think we have about, off the top of my head, 163 schools in the territory. I reckon they wouldn't have 163 schools in Cairns. So, and that's not knocking Cairns, but it puts a bit of perspective about how we manage things from a population base.
I see. Now, with the funding that's going towards the police stations, will that also be including training or basic things that the police force might need as well?
Well, it includes mainly infrastructure. The training for police officers comes through the training budget within the police administration themselves. One thing that's interesting when you're looking at the infrastructure that government's doing right now, and we haven't spoken about this before, but my main mantra in terms of Aboriginal affairs in particular is economic development. I want people working, I want people in business. That's what I want. That's the number one thing I stand for. And I've said that within government loud and clear, and for the last 18 months as being Chief Minister, we've been pushing that through, and very soon you'll see us announce that the Department of Infrastructure is changing its tendering processes so that where now there's a 10% weighting on all of our projects which say you've got to employ or train Aboriginal people in the Territory, and people get contracts and we just expect that they do that. In the future it's going to say you must do that, and then at the end of the project we'll assess them, and if they haven't done that they won't get 10% of their payment, which companies will not be happy not getting 10% of their payment, so they will have to do that now, and we anticipate that will create across the construction industry an additional 1,000 jobs for Aboriginal people in the Northern Territory, which 1,000 jobs is enormous for a Territory population. So we're doing a lot of that sort of things at the moment to keep things going.
Okay, now...
And we'll announce that soon, but you've heard it first on Larrakia Radio.
Well, thank you very much, Chief Minister. Now, with the recent growth of population in Alice Springs especially, does that mean there'll be any extra police officers down there as well?
Well, what we've already done in Alice Springs is put on an additional 20 police as soon as we came into government, and that's part of the pressure that's now being placed on the current station while we're putting $9 million into a new station. But we also know that the effectiveness of the police down there and what they're doing is significantly driving down crime. Not everybody likes the way that we do it, but we're driving down crime. We've put in place a range of alcohol management issues, which is seeing the consumption of alcohol go down significantly. It's seeing people not being able to purchase alcohol if they're believed to have some sort of an alcohol management issue in terms of themselves misusing or abusing alcohol. But more importantly, and the number one priority is women in Alice Springs are now a lot safer. Domestic violence is going down through the floor substantially because people who have chronic alcohol abuse issues are not flogging their partners, to put it bluntly. So there's less grog getting sold by efforts of police, which is protecting women when you draw that bow, and that's a bloody good outcome in my book.
Fantastic. Now, Chief Minister, your government and the Abbott government have made a commitment for solar power for Aboriginal communities in the Northern Territory. How many communities around the NT will be receiving solar power, and when and who will be installing it?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. This is going to be the biggest solar project in remote areas in the world. It's working in partnership with Minister Ian Macfarlane in Canberra and Tony Abbott and myself, and also one of my local ministers, Minister Willem Westervan Holt, Minister for Essential Services. So Canberra have put in 30 million, we've put in 25 million. We'll see the rollout of solar technology. I mean, we say publicly 30, but let's be real, it's going to be 35 communities, more if we can expand that. So you'll start to see what's called a sort of a semi-hybrid model of both solar and diesel technology. It'll save us around 95 million litres of diesel, which will obviously protect the environment because you're not burning diesel, you're using solar. Solar's not the be-all and end-all in terms of it can't solve all the problems because if there's cloud or rain, you still need power. So it's a hybrid model, but it'll be the biggest solar rollout in the world. And we'll start to get back to your question, we'll start the consultation process next year, and we're getting some of the frameworks in place. Start the consultation, work with communities to make sure those 35 communities want solar, and if they don't, we'll go to someone else. But I anticipate they'll all want solar, they'll all want better efficiencies in doing that. And part of our rollout is also how we can get jobs to local people to be able to do the solar rollout, but also how to do the maintenance from there on after. The solar project themselves isn't the biggest amount of job creation per community, but there will be a lot of jobs. It'll take 4 years to roll out to 35 communities. So there's at least jobs for 4 years to do that, but those people will have to move around. So we've got to work out how we do that with local people, but the ongoing repairs and maintenance will also be something that's very good, and I anticipate that that'll be based probably out of one of our regional centres of Katherine, Tennant, Alice or Nhulunbuy.
Okay, and will there be savings being passed on to the people who use power cards or the tenants inside the communities?
I don't anticipate there being savings to the consumers because government heavily subsidises it already. So we put hundreds of millions of dollars into the diesel that goes out there. So people are not paying what the cost is now. What will it effectively do is reduce the carbon footprint by burning diesel, and it will reduce the expenditure of burning diesel to government because we subsidise all of that power that goes out to communities anyway.
Now, Chief Minister, I'd like to talk about what's happening over there on the Tiwi Islands, about the proposed 99-year lease of over 10,000 hectares of land. I understand that you're in talks with council leaders from the Tiwi Islands. Could you give a bit of information on what's happening there?
I can't talk more highly about this project. We engaged with I've been friends with the Tiwis for many a long year, and I want to support them with economic development. They've got 30,000 hectares under forestry right now with Acacia magnum, the tree. They want to be able to harvest that and sell it. So we have provided a partnership, or we negotiated with some of our friends in Japan. There's a company called Mitsui, one of the biggest companies in the world. They do work on a range of things, but one of them is wood chip. So I've introduced them to the Tiwi Islanders. They've formed a relationship, $200 million partnership between the Tiwi and Mitsui over a 10-year period. The biggest partnership between a Japanese company and an Aboriginal community anywhere in Australia. And the Tiwi Islanders should celebrate that. That is just amazing. That'll create around 180 jobs just on that project itself, plus the on-flow benefits from there on in. So we've supported that relationship. As part of what the Tiwi's moving forward, they need to buy equipment and so forth to get the project moving. And we've had a chat to them and said, look, we want to support you with more economic development. What do you want? They wanted to get into tourism industry, such as having a motel on the Tiwi to get more tourists coming there. Obviously, it supports the ferry that we've started there. It'll support the art and cultural centre. It'll support their supermarket and so forth. So they wanted some tourist accommodation. They wanted more land to be able to do more agricultural development like plantation, but they weren't sure exactly what and so forth. And I said, well, one of the challenges of getting foreign investment to come in, whether it's from the territory, from Australia or overseas, people need security of land tenure. And that's one of the issues we have in Aboriginal communities where there's Aboriginal land rights. It's not that anyone wants to take the land, but you need that security of tenure so you can get a bankable model. So I said, why don't we work on a 99-year lease? We'll get security of tenure. The government will help facilitate that. We'll grant you some money for leasing, help you buy your equipment, and we'll move on to the next phase. That consultation, I think, has been going for about 14 months now.
Okay.
We're just about ready to sign the lease. I've asked one of my agencies, the Land Development Corporation, to do the lease negotiations and to hold the lease and then form that partnership with the Land Council, the traditional owners and future investors that come in. And they've done that. The payments have been made. We're just getting ready for the first round of wood chip production, I think around April next year when the wet season's passed.
Okay.
And we're just about ready to introduce partners or potential partners for motel accommodation and other tourist ventures that can support the Tiwi. One thing that I also did was get one of our other agencies called the Land Resource Management Department to come into the Tiwi, took all their staff up there and assess the soil quality and the water quality on the Tiwi Islands to find the best location for 10,000 acres to go into horticultural, agricultural development.
Sure.
Plus they're providing advice about what can grow the best. I mean, I'm not a farmer. I don't know whether it's best to grow papaya or pineapples or trees or whatever. So we've got some experts to come in there and advise the council. And very soon we'll be launching, we're putting all this information together, and very soon we'll be launching a Tiwi Islands investment prospectus.
Sure.
The Tiwi Land Council can then promote to companies who want to come in and partner with the Tiwi people. It is a fantastic news story, and it's something that I'd like to see replicated right across the Northern Territory. We're already starting to talk to, and have been in deep conversations with TOs around Nooka and Numbulwar.
Sure.
And we're just starting those conversations in Wadair and Manangrito. And my message to people is, I'm not going to force economic development on anybody, but if you want to drive change in your community and you're willing to have a look at a different way of doing things, such as what's happening on the Tiwis, I'll back you the whole way. I'll help you set it up. I'll get all the government resources behind you, and let's do it differently and drive economic development and drive jobs so that the kids who are going to school have a purpose of going to school, so that they know that they can have an economic future.
Speaking of the jobs, is it going to be jobs for the Tiwi people in the community there, or fly in, fly out like some mining places?
For Tiwi. I mean, there'll be times when you've got to bring experts in. I mean, as a government, we bring experts in from Sydney and Melbourne or Adelaide or other places from time to time to give us advice, and that will happen undoubtedly on the Tiwis as well, but it's all about jobs for the Tiwis.
Fantastic. Now, Chief Minister, I understand that you're a key speaker today at the NT Major Projects Conference. Can you give us a bit of an update what happened?
Well, the Tiwi project got a bit of a mention there. We have this model in the territory called major projects. It's where there is something that we think is so big and is going to have such a drive for economic development and social development in the territory that we want it to go ahead, and we put our focus on that intently. The Impex gas development in the Territory is one of those. The future salt mine that's going to be next to Titchikala or at Titchikala near Maryvale Station, about 150 k's south of Alice. That's another one. The Shell offshore facility and servicing, that's another one. And I've just recently announced that the proposed pipeline between the Northern Territory and the Eastern Seaboard, the gas pipeline, will be our 16th major project in the Northern Territory. And the reason that's important is because the pipeline infrastructure opens a market so that traditional owners who have natural gas resources on their country can start to now see those companies who are doing the leasing and the exploration there get that product to market, because we're creating a market for them, which means that there'll be jobs in their regional remote areas, which means that those gas companies who have to come in will have to build roads, they'll have to build telecommunications to be able to service their operations, which means the communities get the benefit out of that. It's a way of rolling out infrastructure from the private sector, not from government. I think everyone knows that we've got Labor debt around our necks up to our eyeballs, but this means the private sector can do that, so we stimulate the private sector, create jobs and get local infrastructure developed. I think that will be the second biggest project operating in the Northern Territory once we get it finally approved.
Excellent. Well, there's also been talks in the NT government is considering selling TIO. Has any decisions been made over that?
No decision's been made, but we're very well advanced now. TIO is the insurance agency of the Northern Territory. It started back in 1979 when there was a lack of insurers in the Territory. Today we see that TIO is the only state-owned insurance company in Australia, and it operates in the Northern Territory against 15 other operators, all of who provide insurance cover on flood and all bar one on... everyone provides cover on cyclone and all bar one provides cover on flood. And what's happening with it, it is a fantastic organisation, fantastic workers there, and a fantastic brand that's stood by Territorians for a long time. But having 15 competitors, it's getting quite challenging for TIO because TIO can only spread their risk over the Territory, which means it's a challenge to keep the premiums down when you're competing against other companies which are national and international, who can spread their risk right around Australia and around the world. So what that means for TIO is premiums are going to come up soon, and if they go up too far and competition is too tough, TIO may not be there in the future. So we want to release TIO from its shackles, allow them to compete in a competitive environment, remove that government guarantee which hinders them, and if we sell it to another company, we'll be saying TIO brand must stay, the jobs must stay, flood and cyclone cover must stay, and you must continue to support those local businesses who you have now with people like the Motor Traders Association, some of the panel guys who do the work here, and the inspectors, and also do the sports sponsorship that we all love TIO doing in the Northern Territory. It is a Territory institution, we've got to keep it, but we also have to release the shackles off it, otherwise it might disappear in years to come.
Now, what do the general public think of this?
I think the general public are very supportive of this. Years gone by, people would say, it's our asset, don't sell it. But they now appreciate around the country, asset sales is something that's happened. And if we can guarantee that the TIO brand will stay in some of those important aspects, Territorians will be supportive of it. But what I've been saying to Territorians is, it's not about selling it, it's about where we put the money. So we're not just going to take the money and put it into paying off Labor debt. We want to put it back into the community. So we're asking people what they think it should go into. I've got a few ideas. I think new sports facilities, flood amelioration work around Rapid Creek, roads to Aboriginal communities which can open up the country and help drive agricultural and horticultural development for those communities to create jobs. To me, that's really important. Building community and economic infrastructure right across the Northern Territory. That way, Territorians, they're not losing the proceeds of TIO. They're actually getting it back in spades and building the economy for the future through the investment in infrastructure.
Okay, and we'll go into another thing as well. I understand that about the ports, that there are consideration of actually not so much as selling or privatising it in general, but hiring it out. Is that
well? There'll be a model of privatisation. We don't want to sell it, but we're very keen on what they call a management rights agreement, where you lease it out for 99 years and someone else operates it. The port operates very well. It's financial. But the amount of containers that it goes over, the amount of product that goes over it, limits its ability to reduce the costs and so forth. What we need with the port is a substantial investment to grow its size. So we have what's called an 850 metre quay line. So the front of the wharf is about 850 metres long. We want that to get bigger. The amount of the hard stand, that is all the concrete area behind the port where you park things, we want that to get bigger. These things cost a lot of money. The reefer points, which is a place where you put a refrigerated container, be able to plug into power so that you can move frozen meat and veggies and all that sort of chilled things that go through those chilled containers, refrigerated containers, they need to expand. I mean, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars to do that. Government doesn't have it with our labour debt, so let's see if we can find a partner who may want to come in, pay us to lease it for 99 years, but importantly, tell us how you will expand the port so that we can get more services coming backwards and forwards on the port. If we can have more containers coming across our port on an everyday basis, it'll increase the economies of scale and reduce the cost of doing port services. So we're well advanced in those discussions, and we think that that'll lead to a range of advanced outcomes for Territorians moving forward. Although those ones will be harder to see, but structurally they'll make a big difference.
So it's more of a carry-on effect.
Absolutely. I've said we're not going to try and sell the lease of the port for the highest amount of money. We'll sell it for the most amount of investment that's going to come into the port. We want quay line expanded, we want tug pans built, we want hard stand and reefer points, and we want to see the rail line completed in its loop. They're important things to make the port more functional, more operational, and get better economies of scale, which can drive down the cost of living in the Territory.
And finally, before we go to some music, can you tell me what's happening with the Barclay Youth Services? I understand that a bus has been donated to them.
Yeah, we're very keen to support all parts of the Northern Territory, and what we've seen is the offer of a bus coming out of the Community Benefit Fund in the Northern Territory, another thing that I'm responsible for. We get a lot of these requests from community organisations who provide a very valuable community service, and I think it was just a couple of weeks ago that I had an opportunity of taking one of the old government buses and presenting it to the Barclay Youth Services, who will now have an opportunity of helping transport some of the young people around Tennant Creek and getting them further engaged in youth activities.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Chief Minister, for spending your afternoon with us here.
No worries. Thanks very much for having us.
Fantastic. That was the Chief Minister of the Northern Territory, Adam Giles.